Hi everybody and welcome back to the channel. So today we're going to talk about market manipulation. Now market manipulation, as far as I'm concerned, can take three different routes. You've got brute force, you've got gentle market manipulation, and you've got restriction of supply. And basically we're going to cover all three today, and one that I am currently inadvertently doing. So the first one we're going to cover is basically just the brute force way of manipulating a market. I've done this in the past with the code processor, and unfortunately you can't really see it here because it happened. I did it in January when I came back to the game, and what I did, basically at the time, I prior to leaving, I had a Tech 2 code processor, so I know generally how this market works, how often they sell, and yeah, decided that the price that they were currently being sold for was under the production price, and I decided to buy out the whole market. And I think at the time we were about about a million ISK per unit, so I bought out the entire lot in Amar and Jitter and relisted them for about 1.4 million ISK. Now obviously with the build price, or buying them below build price, I was quite confident that I would obviously make my ISK back and anything else that I could sell it over. And I think all in all I made a decent amount of ISK back on that. But the problem with brute forcing it, especially if it's a Tech 2 item or an item that can be produced, is obviously if you are not careful you can be left holding the bag, because obviously as people see the price of it spike, they come rushing in to fill the gap. And I'm doing exactly the same as the rapid heavy missile launchers at the moment. So these are spiking quite heavily at the moment, and you can see now this isn't necessarily someone manipulating the market. This could just be somebody actually wanting or needing how many items that are here, but basically at the moment we're looking at a 12% spike. So I am trying to offload the ones I currently have, and I am building items in order to be able to fill this current spike. So that is the problem with brute forcing, that you are unnaturally affecting the market, and a lot of the time it can be filled by other people. Now obviously if you are going to do that to a market, you can do it with items which can't be readily manufactured, and this is obviously very relevant in the filament market, or the abyssal items that you get. So you could buy up a good number of these. So what, we must have 100 here, so you could basically spike the price to 1.4 million ISK. You could buy out the rest of these, which isn't many, and then the minimum price would be 1.6. So the good portion you would be selling for 250,000, 300,000 ISK more. So, and because it's a limited supply item, that obviously you can't manufacture these are either you get them or you don't from the Abyss, that there is a finite supply. So these are easier to manipulate than obviously Tech 2 markets, where people are able to fill the specific void that you have created by buying out the market. So at the moment I am inadvertently manipulating a market, and that is because I am trying to build a very large number of entropic radiation sinks. I currently have recently researched, you may have seen or you may not have seen the video that's coming out on this, that basically I have I needed to produce 930 Tech 2 entropic radiation sinks. Now when I started to do this, I didn't realize that the supply of Tech 1 radiation sinks was so limited, and so therefore there wasn't enough that I could buy straight off the market at a reasonable price. So I have been aggressively updating my buy order, because obviously I need these Tech 1 in order to build the Tech 2s. And when the price gets below a certain point, in regards to the sell orders here, I am buying them out. Now that is having an effect that it is pushing the price up, and we're at 18.2% at the moment. And as you can see on the graph here, it was around about the 2 million mark, and we're basically spiked to this level here. And that is because, oh look at that, someone's just pipped me. So again, aggressively keeping on top of that, and that is slowly pushing the price up. Now at the moment I'm doing it quite nicely here, because let's have a look, see, let's just So as you can see here, I've been buying roughly at just over the 2 million mark and just under 2 million. So these are ones that have been put on the listed, so I've been buying them directly or straight off as soon as they're on. And as I said, that is pushing the price up. Now these are limited items, so they only come from the BPCs that are dropped by the in the Abyss sites. And again, I am buying up the contracts. As you can see here, this guy's only selling a one run, so they don't count. This is another one run, so that doesn't count. So we are getting down to the point where at 12.9. So anything around about the 10 million mark, I am buying up, because again, they only come in fives at a time. So I can try making up the tech ones that I have here, so I can build them straight from the BPC in order to try and get to the quantity I need, because again, I need 930 of them, and at the moment I've managed to acquire 500 prior. I'm at 700 and 750, give or take. So at the moment I am still buying these up, and as I said, that is therefore slowly pushing the market up. Now I would consider this gentle market manipulation, because again, I could have bought out the entire stock here, but I wasn't necessarily sure that I could make a profit. And as it currently stands, the Tech 2 version of this hasn't responded yet. Now that doesn't mean that it won't. So we're at what, 4.8, and that hasn't been responding yet, but that's because I've only been doing this for the last 2 days on the Tech 1 version. Now hopefully, as people realise the Tech 1 version is running out or going up in price, the Tech 2 version should follow suit. And as people buy these out, because there are a lot sold per day, as well as the Tech 1, there's a 500 to 800 sold per day. So hopefully that will start transferring over to the Tech 2 version, which will be just in time for me to sell it. So as I said, that's more gentle. It's a encouraging people to up their price, and therefore hence the gentle market manipulation. I am forcing the price up, and therefore people are responding by putting their general sell orders up or trying to outbid me, and that therefore has an effect, but it raises the market slowly but surely. And because it's not got the huge spike that you see with the brute force way of doing it, that people just naturally slowly gravitate to a higher and higher cost. Now there is a certain point where obviously that won't go any further unless I continue buying and buying and buying, but again, that's going to require a decent amount of ISK, and there could be a lot of people sat with the BPCs in their hangars that just haven't sold them yet. So I had 40, for instance, which is why I've been changing them to the Tech 2 versions. But obviously I'm more than likely not the only person that is sat with a lot of these in their hangar. So you have to be careful that potentially somebody could just swoop in, build thousands of them or good hundreds of them, and flood the market with cheaper. And then I'm left with two options of either buying up the entire stock, which at the moment would be relatively fine, but depending obviously on the item and how much they're coming in at, you could end up being left holding the bag. And if I keep buying them up at a higher price, obviously if somebody comes back at 2 million with 1,000, I'm at that problem there. Then do I sell what I've got at a loss? Do I continue building it into a Tech 2, or do I just buy out the lot and then hope that no one else comes in and redoes the same thing? So it's not always as straightforward as you'd like it to be. Now hopefully everybody will play ball and the price will keep rising. The Tech 2 price will then reflect the current cost, and happy days, I'll make a decent amount of profit. And then there's limiting the supply. Now Goonswarm were doing this many years ago and doing it to great effect, and the best example would probably be with technetium moons. That technetium moons could only be found in a certain area. I can't quite remember where it was offhand, but basically Goonswarm owned the area. They owned the vast majority of the technetium moons because they were regional, and they were limiting the supply of technetium to the market. This naturally had a huge spike on technetium over a long period of time, and basically if you wanted to build a Tech 2 item that included technetium, you had to pay the price. items went up in a corresponding way, and Goonswarm made a lot of ISK from it, because again, they were the only ones who had it, and they would limit the supply to the market. And again, this was also done with ice. And several years ago, the ice belts, I think it was the Caldari ice belts, it could have been the Galanti, could have been any of the four basically, I can't remember, but Goonswarm decided that they would pay their members to gank anybody that was in a, we'll say, a Caldari ice belt. So if you were a miner and in a Caldari ice belt, a group of Goonswarm guys would come in, gank you, and basically Goonswarm would pay the people who did the ganking, obviously if they were goons. And this had the corresponding relation of pushing up the price of ice. Now, back in the day, you had to have corresponding isotopes to certain races. So in, for instance, a carrier at the moment, if you're a Caldari, you need, it's hydrogen or oxygen, or I can't remember, but we'll say it's hydrogen. And it used to be the same for the posses. So if you had a Caldari posse, you would have to fuel it with that specific isotope, so for instance hydrogen, and you couldn't use any of the other blocks because they would make their corresponding fuel block, where now the Citadels take any of the fuel blocks, so it doesn't really matter. And that was a change that CCP brought in, more than likely to counteract anybody doing the same thing, because again, the goons made an awful lot of ISK from limiting the supply here. And again, that is a great way of manipulating the market, that if you can control the supply, you can control obviously how much is on the market, and that will have a direct effect on the price that you that people are having to pay, and especially if it's something they need. Obviously carriers at the time, if you had a Caldari carrier or dreadnought, it wasn't a huge amount of ISK, because you don't jump them all around all that often. But obviously if you had a POS, there were thousands of POSs, and again, if you had a Caldari one, you would have to pay the corresponding amount of ISK to buy the necessary isotope in order to keep it running.